Can I like you? Natalia froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. What? His gaze didn't waver. He leaned closer, as though trying to close the distance between them. Can I like you? More than a friend. I'm falling in love with you, Natalia, said Leo, his eyes meeting hers without looking away. The room went silent except for the faint hum of her TV. The grand ballroom glittered with warm lights, the air filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the scent of roses. Tonight was no ordinary gathering. It was Chunwei and Lina's second wedding anniversary. The couple, glowing with happiness, stood at the center of the hall as friends and family surrounded them in celebration. Now, to make this night even sweeter, Chunwei announced, mischief in his eyes, let's have some fun. Random pairs will join us for the couple's dance. Cheers erupted. Guests clapped and names were drawn. Among the crowd stood Liu Zhang, the cold, untouchable CEO everyone whispered about. His aura was distant, his silence infamous. People claimed he hadn't wasted words on strangers in years. His ice-cold demeanor was his armor. And then, fate called his name. Liu Zhang and Natalia Chun. Natalia gasped, her wide eyes flicking toward the stoic man across the hall. She had been laughing loudly with her best friend Lina seconds earlier, her chatter filling the space like sunlight. And now, she was expected to dance with the man whose expression could freeze fire. Good luck, Lina whispered with a teasing grin. Natalia rolled her eyes, straightened her posture, and strutted forward, her heels clicking with confidence. Leo rose slowly, his sharp black suit molding to his tall frame, his gaze unreadable. When their hands touched in the center of the ballroom, Natalia noticed how cool his palm was against hers. He didn't say a word, just a stiff nod. Natalia, however, was not built for silence. Well, she quipped as the music began, at least you're handsome. That makes this less awkward. A ripple of laughter spread through the guests. Leo's expression didn't flinch, but Natalia caught the faintest twitch of his jaw. She grinned, leaning in as they began to move. Relax, Mr. Statue, she teased, spinning gracefully, her dress flowing like a cascade of light. Dancing won't kill you. For the first time that evening, Leo's eyes flickered with something other than ice, surprise. No one dared to talk to him this way, yet Natalia danced with such joy, such ease, that her laughter filled the space between them. While Leo's steps were calculated, stiff, hers were free, playful, tugging him into her rhythm. The more she teased, the less heavy his silence felt. You know, she whispered as the music swelled, if you keep frowning, your face will get stuck like that. A sharp exhale escaped Leo. Was it a laugh? No one could tell, but Natalia heard it, and for some reason her heart skipped. The crowd erupted in applause when the dance ended, and Chunwei clapped his friend on the back. Well, I didn't know the great Leo could still move like that. Leo didn't reply, of course. He simply let go of Natalia's hand. Yet before he walked away, his dark gaze lingered on her a second too long. Natalia tilted her head, a mischievous spark in her eyes. Careful, Mr. Zhang. I might just make you talk one day. Leo didn't answer, but for the first time in years, he wasn't entirely sure he could keep his silence intact. The party wound down, but Chunwei and Lina insisted their closest friends stay for dinner at their cozy home. The chandelier above the dining table glowed softly, casting a golden warmth across the room. Laughter flowed freely, wine glasses clinked, and the sweet aroma of Lina's home cooking lingered in the air. Natalia, always the lively one, found herself with little Chan Hao, their chubby one-year-old son, sitting comfortably on her lap. She made silly faces, exaggerated goo-goo sounds, and even gently bounced him until the baby squealed with laughter. Across the room, Liu Zhang quietly poured himself a drink. His sharp gaze, usually detached from all things, kept drifting toward the girl with the baby. Her laughter wasn't forced. It was light, like a melody that softened the edges of the evening. Almost without realizing, Leo wandered closer. He slipped into the empty seat beside her, undoing a single button of his suit jacket to relax. Glass in hand, His posture was still composed but less rigid than before. You like babies? His voice was low, smooth, carrying a calm that startled Natalia out of her play. She blinked up, then broke into a grin. Oh, Mr. Silent. Didn't notice you sneaking up here. A faint line of amusement flickered in his dark eyes. He shifted slightly, resting back on the chair. I have a name. Natalia tilted her head, feigning curiosity. Do you now? Without another word, Leo reached into his inner pocket, slid out a pristine business card, and held it out to her. Natalia raised her brows but accepted it, glancing down. Zhang Technologies, she read aloud, her lips curving. Of course, the Zhang Technologies, the tech company everyone raves about. Leo gave a small nod. Well, Mr. Zhang Technologies, she said with playful emphasis. I guess I should introduce myself properly too. Natalia Chin, baker, owner of a confectionery. He studied her, his brows lifting almost imperceptibly. Natalia chuckled, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. It's not the grand type of bakery, not yet. Just a startup, really. But hey, people seem to like my cupcakes more than my jokes, so that's progress. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Normally, Leo thrived in silence. But with Natalia, it didn't feel heavy, felt new. He looked at the baby still giggling on her lap, then back at her. You seem content. Natalia grinned. Of course, life's too short to frown your way through it. Don't you think, Mr. Silent? Leo's lips curved ever so slightly. So slight, it might have gone unnoticed. But Natalia saw it, and it made her heart skip a beat. Dinner was in full swing at Chunwei and Lina's home. The aroma of stir-fried vegetables and roasted duck filled the room. Plates clattered, and conversations overlapped with laughter. Yet at the far end of the table, a different sort of silence hovered, one that seemed less heavy than usual. Liu Zhang sat with his glass of wine, his expression unreadable as always. But for the first time in years, he wasn't completely detached. His eyes would occasionally drift toward Natalia, who sat across from him, animatedly telling a story about how she once burnt a whole tray of cookies because she got carried away singing karaoke in her bakery. And when I came back, the smoke alarm was crying louder than me. My neighbor thought there was a fire. Natalia finished, her cheeks flushed with laughter. The table erupted, Chun Wei slapping his thigh, Lina covering her mouth with a giggle. Even little Chun Hao babbled from his high chair, as though joining in. Everyone laughed. Everyone except Leo. Yet his lips twitched, just slightly. He didn't laugh out loud, but Natalia noticed. She noticed everything. After dinner, as the night quieted, guests trickled out until only a few remained. Natalia excused herself to the balcony for some fresh air. She leaned against the railing, staring at the city lights, humming softly. Behind her, the glass door slid open. Do you always talk that much? Leo's voice came, steady and calm. Natalia smirked without turning. And here I thought you were avoiding me. He stepped closer, his tall figure framed against the dim glow of the dining room. I wasn't avoiding, just listening. That made her pause. Slowly, she turned to face him. Listening? To me? Mr. Silent. I'm not silent, Leo replied, his tone firm but not unkind. I just choose my words carefully. Natalia tilted her head, amused. So, you're saying I waste mine? Not waste, he corrected, surprising even himself with how quickly he answered. His gaze softened for the briefest moment. You make people comfortable. The admission hung between them. Natalia blinked, caught off guard. For a man known for shutting out the world, those words carried weight. She laughed lightly to ease the tension. Well, maybe I'll make you comfortable one day too. For the first time, Leo's eyes truly met hers. Not with the detached sharpness he usually carried, but with something unspoken. Something almost vulnerable. Maybe you already have, he murmured, barely audible. Natalia's heart skipped. She opened her mouth to tease him, but Lina called from inside, breaking the moment. Nat, come taste this new dessert I made. Natalia shot Leo a mischievous grin. Saved by the bell, huh? But don't worry, Mr. Zhang Technologies. I'll get you talking more. Leo watched her disappear inside, the corner of his lips curling ever so slightly. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like solitude. Felt like anticipation. The next morning, the Zhang residence was buzzing with business calls, but Leo's mind wasn't on contracts or figures. Against his will, Natalia's laughter from the night before kept echoing in his head. The way she carried the baby, the way she teased him, the way she filled silence like sunshine filling a dark room. Meanwhile, at Chunwei and Lina's home, the couple were already plotting. "You saw it, didn't you?" Lina whispered as she folded laundry. Chunwei smirked. "Saw what?" "Leo," she said firmly, narrowing her eyes at her husband. "Don't play dumb." He looked at her. "He never looks at anyone like that." Chunwei chuckled. "Well, Natalia is a hurricane. No wall stands forever against her." That evening, Lina called Natalia. "Nat, can you come over tomorrow? I need help baking a cake for Chunwei's parents." Natalia laughed. "Since when do you bake?" "Since I decided I wanted to," Lina replied too quickly. The next day, Natalia arrived at Lina's kitchen. Sleeves rolled up, hair tied back, flour already smudged on her cheek from the first 5 minutes. She was busy whisking when the doorbell rang. "Nat, can you get that?" Lina called sweetly. Natalia padded to the door, opened it, and froze. There stood Liu Zhang, sharp in a dark shirt, but minus the tie and jacket this time. Casual, yet still carrying that commanding aura. Her eyes widened. "You? Here?" Before Leo could respond, Chunwei appeared, clapping a hand on his friend's shoulder. "Perfect timing, Leo. You're just in time to help." "Help?" Leo's brow arched. He didn't help. He signed million-dollar contracts, not stir batter. "Yes, help?" Lina chimed in, pushing a bowl and spatula into his hands with a grin that could only mean trouble. "Natalia can't possibly manage all of this on her own." Natalia smirked, leaning on the counter. "Oh no, don't force Mr. Silent into the kitchen. He might combust." Leo glanced at her, then at the spatula in his hand. Something in her challenge stirred him. Without a word, he removed his watch, set it aside, and rolled up his sleeves. Natalia blinked. "Wait, you're actually—" "Show me what to do," Leo said simply. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Finally, she burst out laughing. "Well, this is a sight I never thought I'd live to see." What followed was chaos. Flour dust on Leo's black shirt, Natalia laughing so hard she nearly dropped the mixing bowl, Chunwei pretending to supervise, and Lina hiding behind her phone camera to catch every moment. At one point, Natalia leaned close, brushing flour off Leo's sleeve. "Careful, CEO Zhang. You might actually start looking human." Leo met her gaze, something unreadable flickering in his dark eyes. "Maybe I always was. You just talk too much to notice." Her laughter froze, her heart stumbling at the unexpected softness in his tone. For a second, the world narrowed. Just the two of them in a kitchen filled with flour, sugar, and something neither of them could yet name. Later that afternoon, the sun was just beginning to dip, casting a golden glow over Chunwei and Lina's outdoor dining space. A rustic wooden table had been set up in the garden, adorned with candles, steaming dishes, and the soft hum of cicadas in the background. Felt homely, warm, the kind of setting that made laughter flow naturally. Natalia was in her element. Sitting opposite Leo, she chatted away with the same bubbly energy as always, waving her chopsticks as she recounted funny stories about customers at her bakery. And then he actually asked if the sugar-free cake was free of charge because it had no sugar. Can you imagine? Natalia slapped the table, her laughter ringing like a bell. Chunwei nearly spit his drink. Lina giggled, shaking her head. Even little Chun Hao babbled along as if joining in the amusement. Leo, as always, was silent, but he wasn't detached. His eyes kept flicking to Natalia. Her bright smile, the way she leaned forward when she spoke, her hands moving as if painting the air with her words. She was alive in ways he hadn't realized people could be. And then it happened. In the middle of her enthusiastic chatter, Natalia stuffed a bit of dumpling into her mouth, laughed mid-chew, and cough, cough, cough. Her face turned red instantly. She tried to wave her hand dismissively, but the coughs came harder. "Oh my gosh, Natalia!" Lena exclaimed, jumping up and reaching for a glass of water. But before she could take a single step, Leo had already risen. His chair scraped lightly against the patio stone, and he was beside Natalia in seconds. His hand pressed gently but firmly against her back, steady and controlled, patting rhythmically to ease her throat. "Easy," he said softly, his deep voice low enough that only she could hear. "Breathe." Natalia coughed into her napkin, her eyes watering, cheeks burning, not entirely from choking. The warmth of his hand on her back was startling, steadying, almost too much. By the time Lena arrived with the water, Leo had already lifted a glass from the table, offering it to Natalia himself. She took it quickly, sipping until her throat finally cleared. Across the table, Chun Wei pressed his fist against his mouth, trying to hold back laughter at the rare sight of the aloof CEO practically fussing over someone. Lena stood frozen, still holding her untouched glass of water, her jaw hanging in awe. The air thickened. Everyone stared. Leo seemed to realize just how out of character he looked. His jaw tightened. His hand lingered a second too long before he snatched it back, straightening. He cleared his throat, expression neutral again, and returned to his seat as if nothing had happened. The silence that followed was unbearable. No clinking cutlery, no chatter, not even the cicadas seemed to fill the gap. Natalia glanced around, her lips twitching. Then, like the force of nature she was, she burst into a laugh. "Well," she said, brushing her hair from her flushed face. "That was embarrassing. Note to self, maybe I should talk less while chewing. Who knew it could be dangerous?" The table exhaled collectively, laughter breaking out again. Chun Wei slapped his thigh. Lena covered her mouth. But Leo simply focused on his plate, refusing to acknowledge the way his ears had turned faintly red. But Natalia wasn't done. She leaned forward again, launching right back into another story as if nothing had happened. Her energy rolled like a tide, pulling everyone in again. Leo picked at his food quietly, but his gaze flicked up every so often just to check. And then, right when Natalia was mid-ramble, waving her chopsticks like she was conducting an orchestra, he spoke. "Careful," he said suddenly, his voice even, eyes locked on her. "So you don't choke again." The words were so blunt, so unexpected, that Natalia froze mid-sentence, blinking at him. And then she laughed. Loud, carefree, delighted. Well, look at you worrying about me." Leo didn't flinch. He calmly lowered his eyes back to his food, as though what he'd said meant nothing. But the faintest twitch of his lips betrayed him. Across the table, Lena and Chun Wei exchanged a long, knowing glance. If Liu Zhang was speaking without being forced, if he was warning someone with quiet care, then maybe, just maybe, something was already changing. The evening glow had already faded into soft twilight by the time Natalia decided it was time to leave. At exactly 6:18 p.m., she shouldered her tote bag, planted a kiss on Lena's cheek, pressed another on little Chun Hao's forehead, already dozing in his cradle, and waved at Chun Wei and Leo. "Bye, everyone," she chirped, her voice still bright even though the night was setting in. With that, she slipped out the door, earbuds in hand, already plugging in to listen to her favorite playlist. Inside, Chun Wei turned almost immediately to Leo, who was sipping from his glass with that same stoic calm. Chen nudged him. "Go drop her off." Leo didn't move. He only raised a brow. "Come on," Chen insisted, lowering his voice. "It's late. Natalia's not the type to mind, but it's not right for her to head home alone." "Not very gentlemanly of you, Leo's gaze lingered, unreadable. Still, he didn't stand, until Chen gave him that look. The kind that said, "Don't argue with me on this." Lena chimed in too, lifting her brows, gesturing toward the door as if to say go. Now, finally, with a sigh so soft it almost went unnoticed, Leo rose. His tall frame moved deliberately toward the door. But the moment he opened it, bump, he collided lightly with Natalia, who nearly stumbled back. She looked up, startled, then broke into a grin. "Oh, Mr. Silent, you again. Forgot my phone. Can't survive without music, you know?" She waved the device proudly. Leo adjusted his stance, his hand still on the door. I'll be waiting outside. I'll take you home. Natalia tilted her head, amused. Ah, that's sweet. But really, I'll be fine on my own. No need to play knight in shining armor. His gaze didn't falter. I insist. Something in his tone made her stop teasing. She smiled, softer this time. All right then. Minutes later, the car hummed quietly along the streets. No music, just silence broken by the rhythm of the engine. Natalia sat comfortably, scrolling through her phone. Every now and then, she chuckled at something she saw. Leo's eyes flicked toward her. Do you always laugh that much? Natalia glanced up, her grin mischievous. What can I say? The world's too funny not to. Why? Does it bother you, Mr. Silent? He looked back at the road. No, just wondering. How many times you've nearly choked on food in your lifetime? She gasped, mock offended. You really went there? For your information, that was a one-time thing. Okay, maybe 2. Or 5. She trailed off sheepishly. For the first time, his lips curved faintly. So quick she nearly missed it. The silence stretched again until Leo spoke once more, his tone thoughtful. There's somewhere I'd like to take you. Place I found recently. They sell good cakes and confectionery. Natalia's eyes sparkled instantly. Cakes? Say no more. They pulled into a quiet corner cafe, modern yet cozy, with warm yellow lights spilling from its windows. Inside, Leo returned with a tray, an assortment of cakes carefully chosen, and a tall glass of watermelon juice for himself. For you, he said simply, setting it before her. Natalia's eyes widened. You bought all these? For me. She grabbed a fork eagerly, taking the first bite. Oh wow, these are good. He leaned back, sipping his juice, watching her with quiet interest. What do you think? Honestly? She mumbled through a mouthful, grinning. They're really nice. But now I'll have to secretly upgrade my recipes so people don't ditch my little bakery for this place. She laughed, cheeks puffed with cake. Her joy so genuine that Leo found himself staring without meaning to. Then suddenly he leaned slightly forward. Before she could react, his finger brushed lightly against the corner of her lips. Natalia froze, jerking back in shock, nearly dropping her fork. Leo sat back calmly, wiping his hand with a napkin, as if nothing happened. His tone was composed, almost teasing. You had something on your mouth. Her heart hammered, her face warming as she blinked at him. You could have just told me, you know? He didn't reply. He only took another sip of his juice, eyes calm, but a flicker of something deeper lingered there. Something even Leo himself wasn't ready to name. Natalia, flustered yet secretly thrilled, stuffed another bite of cake into her mouth to hide her smile. And somewhere, between silence and laughter, a spark began to grow. Chunwei and Lina's house was always lively, but on game nights it turned into a battlefield of laughter, competition, and playful arguments. Natalia loved it. She had never missed one, and tonight was no exception. Earlier that evening, Chun had sent his usual reminder in the group chat. Leo almost ignored it as he often did. Game nights weren't his scene. But then Chun added a private note. Don't overthink. Just come. You might enjoy yourself this time. For some reason, Leo's fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Then, before he could stop himself, he typed a message to Natalia. Are you going for game night? Then about a minute she replied, Of course. Wouldn't miss it for the world. I'll pick you up. Natalia stared at her screen, stunned. The aloof CEO was volunteering to pick her up? She giggled, shaking her head. Mr. Silent, you're full of surprises. When the car pulled up in front of Chunwei's house, Natalia practically bounced in her seat. Unbuckling her seatbelt, she beamed at Leo. Game nights are always the best. You'll love it, she said, her eyes shining. Without waiting for his response, she dashed out of the car, her excitement spilling over like a child running into a candy shop. Leo sat for a moment watching her go. A faint curve tugged at his lips before he followed. Inside, the 4 of them gathered around the center table in the living room. Cards, board pieces, and snacks cluttered the space. Natalia suddenly turned to Leo, palm outstretched. Phone. He blinked, caught off guard. What? Phone. she repeated, grinning. Game night rule. No distractions. Don't worry, Mr. Silent. I'm not hacking into your secret empire. Leo arched a brow, but something about her playful insistence tugged at him. Slowly, he handed it over. Natalia flicked the device into silent mode, waved it in triumph, and placed it back in his palm. See? No snooping. I play fair. The corner of his mouth twitched. Half amusement, half disbelief. No one ever handled him like this. The games began. Natalia and Lina quickly teamed up, their energy infectious. Every win had them squealing and high-fiving. Every near-miss had them clutching each other dramatically. Meanwhile, Chun-Wei groaned at his losses, while Leo, though quiet, played with a surprising sharpness that made Natalia narrow her eyes. You, she accused, pointing at him, are hiding your game skills, aren't you? Leo's only answer was a faint smirk, but it was enough to send Natalia into peals of laughter. By the end of the night, the girls had triumphed. Lina draped herself on Natalia's shoulder, still giggling. We smashed them. Beginner's luck, Chen muttered, though his grin betrayed him. Later, the four sprawled in the living room. A movie played softly in the background, the glow flickering across their tired faces. One by one, drowsiness won. Lina curled into Natalia's arms like a sister, sighing happily. Chun-Wei eventually dozed on the opposite couch. Only Leo remained awake, leaning back, quiet as ever. His eyes drifted toward Natalia. She was asleep now, her head tilted slightly, her arms still protectively cradling Lina. There was something disarming about her even in sleep. Unguarded, genuine. With a sigh, Leo nudged Chen awake. Take her upstairs, he murmured, motioning to Lina. Chun groggily carried his wife up, leaving the room in hushed silence. Now it was just Leo and Natalia. For a moment, he simply stood there, staring at her peaceful expression. Then, without a word, he reached for the blanket draped over the couch, gently covering her with it. His fingers lingered just a second, adjusting it carefully. The couch had an extendable piece, so he pulled it out, making it a makeshift bed for her. Once she was settled, he whispered, almost too quietly for even the walls to hear, "Good night, Nat." A soft smile ghosted across his lips. Then he crossed to the longer couch, laid down and faced the ceiling. For a man who hated noise, tonight's echoes of laughter and chatter felt strangely comforting. He closed his eyes, a quiet whisper escaping. Thank you, Jesus, for everything and everyone. And for the first time in a long while, Liu Zhang drifted into sleep with a smile. The morning sun spilled gently into Chun-Wei and Lina's living room, golden rays creeping through the curtains. Natalia stirred, blinking against the soft light. She sat up slowly, the blanket slipping off her shoulders, her hair slightly messy from sleep. For a moment she looked around, disoriented. Then it came back to her. Game night, laughter, the movie, and then sleep. Wait, she muttered to herself, realizing she was tucked in far too neatly to have done it alone. Her brows lifted. Mr. Silent? Pushing herself up, she glanced around. The long couch across from her was empty, but faint sounds drifted from the kitchen. The quiet clink of a mug, the low hum of a coffee machine. Curiosity piqued. Natalia padded toward the sound. There, standing by the counter in the simple morning light, was Liu Zhang. Jacket gone, tie discarded, his crisp white shirt rolled to the elbows. He was pouring coffee with the same seriousness he probably gave to million-dollar deals. Natalia froze for a second, caught off guard by how natural, how human he looked in this setting. Then she grinned. Well, would you look at that? Mr. CEO makes coffee. Leo turned slightly, glancing at her. His gaze softened for a fraction before he looked back at the pot. You're awake. Sharp observation, Natalia teased, slipping onto a stool at the counter. So, is this your secret hobby? Brewing coffee in strange kitchens. I don't make a habit of it, he replied, setting a steaming cup in front of her. But you should eat something before you leave. Natalia blinked, touched despite his matter-of-fact tone. She wrapped her hands around the cup, inhaling the rich aroma. Thanks. She took a sip, humming in delight. Wow, this is actually good. Who knew you had domestic skills hidden under all that stoic ice? Leo didn't reply immediately. Instead, he sat across from her, a glass of water in his hand, watching her with quiet attentiveness. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was soft, like a blanket wrapping around them. Natalia's chatter dimmed naturally, replaced by the simple comfort of sharing a morning together. But she couldn't help herself for long. She tilted her head, eyes twinkling. Careful, Mr. Zhang Technologies. If you keep this up, people might think you're secretly a nice guy. Leo's lips curved slightly, the faintest smile tugging at his usually serious features. Maybe I don't mind, if it's only you who thinks that. Natalia froze, her heart skipping. The words were quiet, but the weight of them lingered in the space between them. For once, she didn't have a comeback ready. She just sipped her coffee, cheeks warm, smile tugging at her lips no matter how hard she tried to hide it. The morning stretched on in gentle peace. Two unlikely souls sharing a rare softness neither of them had expected. The next afternoon, Natalia stood behind the counter of her small but cozy bakery, Sweet Haven. The shop smelled of warm vanilla and caramel, sunlight spilling through the glass windows. It wasn't grand or fancy like the cafes uptown, but it was hers, and every wall carried her laughter, her late-night work, her dreams. The doorbell jingled. Natalia looked up, ready to welcome a customer, only to nearly drop the piping bag in her hand. Leo, there he was, Mr. Silent CEO himself, in his usual crisp suit, but strangely out of place among pastel walls and shelves stacked with cupcakes. He scanned the room quietly, his gaze resting on the display case filled with delicate pastries. Then his eyes shifted to her. You said you own a bakery, he stated simply, as if that explained why he was standing there. Natalia blinked, then chuckled. Wow, I didn't think you'd actually come. I said I wanted to see it. You did, she teased, wiping her hands on her apron. But you're a CEO. You say a lot of things with that poker face of yours. Who knew you'd keep this promise? Leo raised a brow but didn't reply. Instead, he walked closer, peering at the cakes with the same seriousness he probably reserved for mergers and contracts. Natalia leaned over the counter, smirking. Careful. These aren't stocks. They won't rise or fall with your frown. That earned the smallest twitch of his lips, almost a smile. So? She pressed, sliding a plate with a small assortment of cupcakes toward him. Official taste test. Honest feedback only. And don't you dare hold back just because you're my acquaintance. Leo sat down at one of the small tables, loosening his tie slightly. He picked up a fork, cut into a cupcake, and took a slow bite. His expression stayed unreadable, his silence dragging long enough for Natalia to lean forward anxiously. Well, finally, he set the fork down, his gaze locking with hers. Sweet. Natalia rolled her eyes. That's all? Sweet? My 5-year-old nephew could give me a better review. His mouth curved faintly. It's sweet and balanced, not too heavy. The texture is good. Her jaw dropped. Wait, you actually know what texture means in baking? I know quality when I see it. His tone was calm, but there was a warmth in his eyes as he watched her grin like a child who just won a prize. Natalia puffed her chest dramatically. Ha! I'll take that as high praise from Mr. Silent. She grabbed her own cupcake and took a big bite, cream smudging at the corner of her lips. As she licked it away, Leo's gaze lingered unconsciously, his fingers tightening around the water glass before he looked away. Trying to ignore the flutter in her chest, Natalia leaned forward again. Okay, next challenge, coffee. I want to see if your coffee can beat mine. Leo raised a brow. Are we competing now? Obviously. Life's boring without a little competition. She winked. Unless you're scared you'll lose to a girl. That made him pause, and then, for the first time since they met, a low, quiet chuckle escaped him. It was brief, almost reluctant, but enough to leave Natalia staring in surprise. Wait, she gasped. Did you just laugh? Leo glanced at her, amusement flickering in his otherwise calm eyes. Don't get used to it. Oh, I'm definitely getting used to it, she declared, pointing at him with mock seriousness. That laugh is going down in history. Day one, I made the CEO laugh. He shook his head slightly, but the smile ghosting on his lips betrayed him. And in that cozy little bakery, surrounded by sugar and sunlight, the distance between them quietly narrowed, one sweet bite at a time. It was Saturday afternoon, and Sweet Haven was closed for the day. The shop smelled of vanilla, cinnamon, and melted chocolate, the kind of scent that could make anyone forget their worries. Natalia tied her apron, humming under her breath as she prepared trays of ingredients. The bell jingled. She didn't even need to look up. Right on time, Mr. Silent. Leo stepped in, dressed down in a simple black shirt and jeans. No tie, no suit, just him. And somehow that made Natalia stare a beat too long. "What am I doing here again?" he asked dryly, slipping his hands into his pockets. Natalia grinned, holding up a whisk like a sword. "Today, Mr. CEO, you're my assistant. You're going to bake." His brows drew together. "I don't bake." "Well, you also don't laugh, but you did last time." She smirked. "So let's add baking to your hidden talents." Before he could argue, she shoved a second apron into his hands. He stared at it like it was a foreign object. "I don't." "Oh, hush," she said, stepping forward. Without asking, she slipped the apron over his head and tied it at the back. For a second, she was close enough to catch the faint scent of his cologne. Subtle, clean, steady, just like him. Her heart skipped, but she quickly pulled back, grinning. "Perfect. My new apprentice." Leo glanced down at the apron with a look that said this is ridiculous. But he didn't take it off. They began. Natalia measured flour, sugar, and cocoa powder with ease, tossing instructions his way. "Okay, now whisk that." "No, not like you're signing a contract. Put some energy into it." Leo gave her a flat look but obeyed, stirring slowly, carefully, almost painfully neat. She burst out laughing. "Oh my gosh, you're whisking like you're at a board meeting. Here, like this." She placed her hand over his, guiding the whisk in quick, circular motions. Their hands touched, warm against each other's skin. For a moment, time stalled. Natalia pulled away too quickly, cheeks warm. Yeah, like that. Keep going." Leo said nothing, but there was the faintest curve at the corner of his lips, as if he'd noticed her fluster. The mixing continued until, poof! A cloud of flour erupted when Natalia accidentally bumped the bag. She coughed, laughing, white dust in her hair. Leo raised a brow. "You're messy." "Messy? Excuse me?" She grabbed a pinch of flour and flicked it at him. A small white patch landed on his dark shirt. He froze. Natalia's eyes widened. "Oops." Without a word, Leo dipped his fingers in the flour bowl and tapped her forehead with it. Natalia gasped, then laughed so hard she bent over. "You did not just do that." His expression stayed calm, but his eyes glinted with quiet amusement. Fair is fair. The baking session turned into a playful flour battle, Natalia giggling uncontrollably while Leo, stoic as ever, still somehow joined in, his shirt dusted white, his fingers lightly smeared with dough. By the end, the kitchen was a mess, and the cake batter was half spilled. But Natalia's cheeks hurt from smiling, and Leo, for once, looked at ease. She leaned on the counter, breathing hard from laughter. "You know, for a guy who doesn't bake, you weren't half bad." He picked up the whisk, now streaked with chocolate. "I follow instructions." Natalia grinned, shaking her head. "No, you don't. But thanks for trying anyway." Their eyes lingered on each other for a moment too long, the playful air softening into something quieter, warmer. Natalia quickly broke it with a clap of her hands. "All right, Mr. Apprentice. Let's get this cake in the oven before we end up eating raw dough." Leo simply nodded, but as he placed the pan in the oven, Natalia caught the tiniest smile tugging at his lips. And in that small, flour-dusted kitchen, something had shifted, something sweet, unexpected, and just beginning to rise. The smell of fresh chocolate cake filled the air. By the time the oven's soft ding echoed, Natalia had already wiped her face, changed into a clean apron, and tried to tame her flour-dusted hair. Leo, however, still had a white streak near his jawline. He hadn't noticed. Natalia chuckled softly, holding back the urge to point it out. Should I tell him? Or let him walk into Chun and Lena's house like that? As if on cue, Chen's cheerful voice echoed when they stepped inside with the cake box. Well, what do we have here? A cake delivery from my favorite baker and her assistant. Natalia laughed, handing over the box. More like apprentice. He whisked. He mixed. He even threw flour at me. Threw flour. Lena's brows shot up as she looked at Leo, her lips curving. That doesn't sound like the Leo the first no. Leo was already settling into the corner of the sofa, avoiding their gazes. She exaggerated. Nope. Natalia plopped down beside Lena, already explaining animatedly, her hands flying as she described how serious he looked while whisking and how he tapped her forehead with flour. Her laughter filled the room, warm and unrestrained. Chun and Lena exchanged a look, subtle but clear. When the cake was finally sliced, Natalia eagerly pushed a fork toward Lena. Try it. Tell me what you think. Lena took a bite, her eyes widening. Nat, this is so good. It's soft. Rich. Ugh. It melts in the mouth. Chun took a forkful, nodding. Not bad. Sweet Haven might just have competition. Careful, Natalia teased. You might be tasting Leo's contribution too. Leo simply sipped his tea, gaze steady but quiet, as if none of this mattered. Yet there was a faint trace of pride in his eyes, one that Natalia noticed, though she pretended not to. The four of them settled in, laughter bouncing around the living room. But as the night wore on, Lena curled against Chen's side, and Natalia leaned comfortably on a pillow. Leo remained upright on the couch, watching the trio. Chen's voice broke the moment. So, Leo, you actually went to bake. Leo's tone was flat. She insisted. She insisted, and you went? Chun said with a knowing smirk. Lena hid a grin behind her hand. That's interesting. Natalia blinked. What's interesting? Nothing, Lena said quickly, giving Leo a sly side glance. Leo, unbothered, picked up another slice of cake and slid it quietly toward Natalia's plate. Eat before it gets cold. Natalia froze mid-laugh, glancing at him. He didn't meet her eyes, just continued sipping his tea like it was the most natural thing in the world. Chun raised his brows. Lena's lips twitched. Natalia smiled sheepishly, taking the bite. Thanks. The atmosphere shifted, playful on the outside, but with a subtle awareness underneath. Lena leaned closer to Chun later that night when Natalia went to wash her hands. She brings him to life, doesn't she? Lena whispered. Chun nodded slightly. Yeah, I haven't seen him this easy in years. Lena smiled knowingly, her gaze flicking to Natalia, who was humming happily in the kitchen. Something's happening here, she thought, her heart quietly full. And though no one spoke it aloud, the air in the room was charged with the quiet beginnings of something sweet and undeniable. The night was unusually calm. Natalia had just finished cleaning up her shop when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Leo. Leo, step outside for a minute. She frowned playfully, grabbing her tote. Bossy as always. When she stepped out, she found Leo's sleek car parked by the curb, headlights dimmed. He leaned casually against the door, hands tucked in his pockets, jacket loose over his shoulders. Mr. Silent, what are you doing here? Natalia asked with a grin. Chun and Lena said you'd probably lock yourself up again after work, Leo replied, his voice even. So, I came. Her brows rose. Came for what? He glanced toward the street where a cluster of people were gathered. Bright colors flickered in the distance. Festival. Lanterns. Do you want to go? Natalia blinked, then laughed softly. You? At a festival? Voluntarily? He only opened the car door. Get in. The festival was alive with light. Strings of lanterns swayed gently above, the air rich with laughter, sizzling food, and faint music. Natalia's eyes lit up instantly, her smile radiant as she darted ahead like a child. Leo followed, quieter but with his gaze never leaving her. She pointed at everything: cotton candy stalls, handmade trinkets, couples holding little lanterns. Here, try this. Natalia shoved a stick of candied fruit into his hand. Leo looked at it like it was foreign currency. Sugar on sticks? She rolled her eyes. Eat, before I eat it all. So he did. Slowly. Her eyes widened. Well, sweet. Natalia burst into laughter. That's the point. Later, As they walked further, a lantern vendor pressed 2 paper lanterns into their hands. "Write your wishes and set them free," the old woman said warmly. Natalia immediately crouched with a pen, scribbling quickly. "Okay, mine's ready." Leo raised a brow. "That fast?" "Of course," she said, hiding hers behind her back. "No peeking." He hesitated, then wrote something down as well. They lit the lanterns together, their hands brushing briefly as the paper glowed between them. Natalia's breath caught at the fleeting warmth, and for a moment, she looked at him instead of the lantern. The lanterns floated upward, side by side. "What did you wish for?" she asked softly. Leo kept his gaze on the sky. "If I tell you, it won't come true." Natalia pouted. "That's cheating." "You?" She smiled secretively. "Mine's a secret too." They both watched until the lanterns disappeared among the stars, silence folding around them like a soft blanket. Then, out of nowhere, Leo reached forward with his hand, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Natalia froze, her breath hitching, the world suddenly slowing down. "You're always messy," he murmured, his voice low but oddly tender. She blinked, trying to laugh it off. "Messy, but cute, right?" He didn't answer. His eyes lingered just a moment longer before he looked away, shoving his hands back into his pockets. Natalia's heart thumped as she hugged her tote against her chest. She glanced at him, smiling softly to herself. Mr. Silent has a heart after all. The walk back to the car was quieter than before, but not uncomfortable. It was a silence filled with something new, something unspoken, yet warm. That night, when Natalia lay in bed, she found herself replaying the image of his hand brushing her hair back, again and again. She buried her face in her pillow with a smile, whispering, "Thank you, Jesus, for this night." The bakery smelled of warm bread and buttered croissants, ovens humming, trays sliding in and out, chatter filling the background. Natalia had flour on her cheek and chocolate stains on her apron as she leaned against the counter, phone balanced on a little stand beside her. On the screen, Leo sat in his office, collar slightly undone, glasses perched low on his nose. Papers were stacked neatly behind him, but his laptop camera only captured his sharp features, and the faint smile he wore only when he was talking to her. "Are you actually working?" Natalia teased, pressing icing into swirls on a cupcake. "Or did you just open your laptop to stare at me?" Leo's lips curved faintly. "And if I did?" She looked up in surprise, blinking. "Then you need a hobby." "I found one," he replied smoothly, typing something on his keyboard. Natalia groaned. "You're impossible." Her assistants giggled from across the counter, whispering as they glanced at the screen. Natalia waved them off with her spatula, cheeks warm. The video call stretched on for hours. They talked about everything. Her bakery dreams, his work routines, childhood memories, favorite foods, places they wanted to see. "You've never been to the mountains?" Natalia gasped, nearly dropping her whisk. "Never. That's a crime. Everyone should see the sunrise from the mountains at least once in their life." He tilted his head. "Then take me someday." She blinked, heart stumbling at the sudden softness in his tone. "Maybe I will." Later that evening, Natalia collapsed on her couch, oversized shirt falling over her knees, a tub of ice cream in her lap. She scrolled half-heartedly through movies before settling on a cheesy rom-com, dim lights glowing in her cozy apartment. Her phone buzzed. "Leo, again." She rolled her eyes with a smile and answered, holding the phone low while keeping her eyes glued to the TV. "Yes, bossy?" On screen, Leo was in his bedroom now, hair slightly tousled, shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. He leaned back against his headboard, one arm resting casually behind him. "What are you watching?" he asked. "Movie," she mumbled around a spoonful of ice cream. "You're ignoring me." "No, I'm multitasking," she corrected. "Movie, ice cream, and you." His chuckle was low, almost unnoticeable. For a while he just watched her. Natalia didn't notice. Her eyes were fixed on the screen, her lips curving when the movie make lead spoon fed the female lead. Then, quietly, almost as if he hadn't meant to say it aloud, Leo whispered, "I like you." Natalia didn't even blink. "HM? What was that?" she asked distractedly, still looking at the movie. His lips curved into a small smile. You're cute. She finally tore her gaze away, raising a brow. Wait, what did you just say? Leo leaned forward slightly, the faintest glimmer in his eyes. Natalia. He paused, then repeated, clearer this time, voice steady. Can I like you? Natalia froze, spoon halfway to her mouth. What? His gaze didn't waver. He leaned closer to the camera, as though trying to close the distance between them. Can I like you? More than a friend. The room went silent except for the faint hum of her TV. Natalia let out a nervous laugh, hugging her pillow with her free arm. You're messing with me, right? This is some kind of joke? Leo shook his head slowly. His voice was deeper this time, more vulnerable, stripped of the walls he always carried. I don't joke about this. Not with you. Her chest tightened. But why? You barely even. Because you're the first person in a long time, he interrupted softly, who makes me laugh without trying, who makes me want to stay longer in places I'd usually leave, who makes silence feel full. Natalia's throat went dry. Her heart pounded so loud she swore he could hear it through the phone. I didn't plan this, Leo admitted, exhaling as if it cost him something. But every time I see you, talk to you, I realize I don't want to stop. Natalia pressed her spoon into her ice cream, staring at him as though he had just turned her entire world upside down. For once, she had no witty comeback, no playful remark. Only a small, breathless laugh escaped her lips as she shook her head, covering her face with her hands. Leo, she whispered, you can't just say things like that. He smiled faintly, eyes soft. Then let me show you I mean it. The screen glowed between them, neither moving, both hearts racing in different rooms, different worlds, yet drawn closer than ever. Natalia's lips curved into a tiny, shy smile as she lowered her hands. You're really something else, you know that? And you, Leo said quietly, are everything I didn't know I needed. The movie played on, forgotten. The ice cream melted slowly in its tub. And for the first time, Natalia wondered if maybe, just maybe, her heart had already said yes. The morning sun filtered into the bakery, golden light dancing across the flour-dusted counters. Natalia hummed under her breath as she arranged fresh pastries on display. The memory of last night's call lingered in her mind, the way Leo's voice had dropped, the way he had asked if he could like her. Her cheeks warmed just thinking about it. She hadn't slept much, replaying those words again and again. Yet strangely, she didn't feel burdened or awkward. Instead, it felt light. Her phone buzzed. Leo. Natalia smiled faintly before answering. Good morning, Mr. Confession. On the other end, Leo chuckled quietly. So you did hear me last night. Maybe, she teased, turning to stack more croissants. Good, he said, his voice steady but gentle. Because I meant every word. That afternoon, Leo showed up at her bakery. Not grand, not flashy, just quietly stepping in, dressed casually, one hand in his pocket. He didn't announce himself, simply stood near the corner watching her interact with customers, her laughter filling the little shop. When she finally noticed him, her brows shot up. Leo, what are you doing here? Buying bread, he answered smoothly, but his eyes said otherwise. She folded her arms, biting back a grin. You drove all this way just for bread? He nodded, dead serious. Best bread in town. And the baker isn't too bad either. Natalia laughed, shaking her head. You're unbelievable. But she packed him a bag anyway, slipping in an extra tart. On the house. That evening, they ended up together again. This time not at Chan and Lena's, not in an office or bakery, but in the quiet warmth of Natalia's little living room. Natalia sat cross-legged on the rug, sorting through recipe notes, while Leo leaned back against the couch, sleeves rolled up, quietly flipping through one of her bakery journals she had left lying around. You wrote down the exact weight of sugar to the gram, he murmured, amused. Precision matters, Natalia defended, lifting her chin. And here I thought you baked with instinct. Both, she said, glancing up at him with a playful smile. Heart and math. For a while, silence filled the space, but it wasn't empty. Natalia scribbled notes. Leo just sat there, Present, not pushing, not hovering, just being near. It was strange how natural it felt. At one point, Natalia leaned back against the couch beside him, stretching her arms with a groan. Their shoulders brushed, but Leo didn't move. He simply tilted his head slightly, catching her expression from the corner of his eye. "Tired?" he asked softly. "A little, but it's a good kind of tired." He nodded. Then, after a beat, he added, "Thank you." She turned to him, puzzled. "For what?" "For letting me be here," he said almost hesitantly. His voice carried a sincerity that made her chest tighten. Natalia looked at him for a long moment. Then, with the smallest smile, she leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. Not a dramatic move, not romantic in the typical sense, just a soft gesture of trust. Leo froze for half a second, then exhaled, a faint smile tugging at his lips. He didn't move, didn't shift to hold her, didn't disturb the moment. He just stayed, steady and quiet, as though protecting something fragile. They sat like that, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant city sounds outside. Natalia closed her eyes briefly, comfort washing over her. "Leo," she murmured. Don't rush this, okay?" His lips curved, voice low. "I won't. I'll go at your pace." Warmth spread in her chest. She smiled, eyes still closed. "Good." And for the first time, Natalia realized she wasn't afraid of where this was going. Because with Leo it felt real, gentle, patient, safe. The morning sunlight spilled across Lena's balcony as the two women sat with mugs of steaming tea, the city noises faint in the background. Natalia had been hesitant at first, but Lena's gentle nudges finally got her talking. "So," Lena tilted her head, eyes sharp with curiosity. "You've been glowing since yesterday. Don't tell me it's just flour dust from your bakery." Natalia nearly choked on her tea. "Lena!" "Oh, don't you dare Lena me!" Lena laughed, setting her mug down. "Something's up. Spill it." Natalia bit her lip, playing with the rim of her cup. Then softly, almost shyly, she whispered, "Leo, he said he liked me." Lena's eyes widened, and then the grin spread across her face so fast Natalia wished she could rewind time and take the words back. "He what?" Oh, Nat. Finally. He confessed. Natalia tried to shush her, cheeks blazing. "Not so loud, your neighbors." But Lena was already bouncing on her seat, clapping like a teenager. "Don't tell me you didn't see this coming. Girl, he looks at you like you're the only one in the room. You're in love. You're so in love." Natalia hid her face in her hands, groaning. "Stop, Lena. Why should I stop when you're turning red like a strawberry tart?" Lena teased, reaching over to tickle Natalia's side. Natalia squirmed, laughing despite herself. Okay. Natalia admitted between giggles. Maybe I like him too." Lena leaned back, satisfied, her eyes soft now. "Good. You deserve this, Nat. And Leo, he's the type who won't break what he holds." Natalia exhaled slowly, a smile tugging at her lips. Deep down, she knew Lena was right. A week later, Leo surprised them all. "Let's go on a mountain adventure," he suggested during one of their group chats. His tone casual, but his eyes lingering just a little too long on Natalia's. Chun looked up from his phone. "Mountains? You? I thought your idea of adventure was board meetings and traffic lights." Leo smirked faintly. "I can do more than that." Lena was instantly in. "Oh yes, fresh air, hiking, bonfire. Count me in." And so, the four of them found themselves hours later surrounded by trees, crisp mountain air filling their lungs as they hiked, laughed, and teased one another. Natalia loved the way Leo carried extra bottles of water without being asked, handing her one every time she slowed down. He didn't fuss, didn't hover, just quietly made sure she was okay. By evening, they gathered around a bonfire. The stars stretched endlessly above them, a million diamonds on black velvet. Chun and Lena sat close, her head resting on his shoulder, their laughter soft and content. Leo and Natalia sat side by side, wrapped in their own blankets. The fire crackled, warm against the cool night air. For a long while, they all just sat in silence, gazing up at the sky. Then, beneath the blanket, Natalia felt a shift. Leo's hand, warm and sure, slipped gently from his side, stretching slightly until it found hers under the folds of fabric. Her breath caught, but she didn't move away. He didn't look at her, didn't make it a spectacle. He simply brushed his thumb against the back of her hand. A steady, grounding touch. Natalia's lips curved in a soft smile as she held his hand back, her thumb returning the tender stroke. It wasn't loud or bold, it was quiet, private, just theirs. The fire cracked, Lena sighed against Chan, and the mountains whispered in the distance. But for Leo and Natalia, the world had narrowed to that single, secret touch beneath the blanket and the silent promise it carried. For the first time in a long time, Natalia felt not just seen, but safe. And for Leo, holding her hand was enough to tell him. She was letting him in. The mountain trip lingered in Natalia's mind long after they returned. She lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, her lips unconsciously curving as she replayed the quiet weight of Leo's hand slipping into hers under the blanket, his thumb brushing her skin, the warmth that spread through her chest. Meanwhile, in his own apartment, Leo sat at his desk pretending to go over documents. But every time he tried to focus, his eyes would drift, his thoughts circling back to Natalia's smile in the firelight and the way she didn't let go of his hand. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair, and chuckled softly to himself. He had been careful, so careful with her, but she hadn't pulled away. That meant something. He picked up his phone, stared at her name, and finally typed, "Are you awake?" Her reply came almost instantly, "Yes, can't sleep." He hesitated, then wrote again, "Would you come watch the sunrise with me tomorrow? Just us." Natalia blinked at the message, sitting up in bed, her heart suddenly racing. Sunrise? Just them? She chewed her lip, but her fingers moved before her doubts could stop them. "Okay, where?" Leo's lips tugged upward at her quick agreement. "I'll pick you up. For 30. Wear something warm." The morning air was chilly when Natalia slipped outside her apartment building, her sweater snug around her. Leo's car pulled up quietly, headlights cutting through the early dawn. He stepped out when he saw her, not just to greet her but to open the passenger door himself. "You're really punctual," she teased softly, climbing in. He arched a brow. "And you're really brave. Most people would have turned me down for sleep." Natalia laughed gently, brushing her hair from her face. "Maybe I just wanted to see what kind of sunrise is worth losing sleep for." He smiled but said nothing, starting the drive. The city was still half asleep, the streets nearly empty as they made their way out to the hills where the sky stretched wide and unbroken. When they reached the top, Leo carried a folded blanket and a thermos he had packed ahead of time. "Come on," he said simply, leading her to a small grassy spot overlooking the horizon. He spread the blanket for her to sit, then poured steaming coffee into 2 cups from the thermos. Natalia accepted hers with wide eyes. "You planned all this?" "Of course," he said, his voice calm, but there was a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "I wanted it to be just you and me. No noise, no interruptions." They sat side by side, sipping their coffee, wrapped in silence as the sky began to shift. First a faint blush of pink, then streaks of gold, painting the clouds with fire. Natalia's breath caught. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Leo looked at her, not the sky. "It is." She felt his gaze before she turned, her cheeks warming as she found his eyes on her instead of the horizon. For a moment, the air between them thickened, quiet but electric. Then Leo leaned back slightly, breaking the intensity with a soft chuckle. "Do you always talk as much as you did at dinner the other day? You almost gave me a heart attack when you choked." Natalia gasped, swatting at him. "Don't remind me of that embarrassing moment." He grinned. "Embarrassing? Maybe. But also, kind of cute." Her face heated, but the honesty in his tone made her laugh. "You're impossible." They fell into an easy rhythm after that, talking about little things, her bakery, his office, random stories from their childhoods. The conversation flowed naturally, like it always did, but underneath was something new, a softness, an awareness. As the sun finally broke the horizon, spilling golden light across the hilltop, Leo set his cup aside. Slowly, he reached out, his fingers brushing over the back of Natalia's hand where it rested on the blanket. She didn't move away. This time, he didn't just slip his hand into hers. He laced their fingers together fully, his palm warm and steady against hers. Natalia looked at him, her chest tightening, her eyes stinging just a little at the gentleness of it. He didn't look back right away. He just watched the sunrise, his thumb stroking hers absently, as if holding her was the most natural thing in the world. Finally, he glanced at her, voice low. "I wasn't sure if you'd say yes." Natalia tilted her head, smiling softly. "To the sunrise or to you?" His lips curved slowly. "Both." Her laugh was soft, nervous but sincere. She squeezed his hand back, whispering, "Then I guess the answer is yes." And with the sun rising before them, and her hand safely in his, Leo knew this moment, quiet, sacred, just theirs, was the start of something he had waited for a long time. The sun had fully risen now, washing the hilltop in soft gold. Natalia still sat close to Leo, her fingers laced with his, their cups forgotten on the blanket. For a while, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The silence felt sacred, like a secret they shared with the sky. Then Leo shifted slightly, his hand tightening around hers as if steadying himself. He reached into his jacket pocket with his free hand and pulled out a small velvet white box. Natalia blinked, her brows lifting. "Leo, what's that?" He didn't answer right away. He just looked at her, really looked at her with eyes that held a rare softness. Then, slowly, he opened the box. Inside lay a delicate silver necklace, its pendant shaped like a tiny intertwined circle, gleaming in the morning light. Her breath caught. "Natalia," he murmured, almost hesitantly. I bought this a while ago. I didn't know when or if I should give it to you." She swallowed, her heart thundering. Leo, still holding her hand with one of his, he carefully lifted the necklace with the other. "May I?" Her throat tightened. She nodded silently, gathering her hair to one side with trembling fingers. Leo leaned closer, sliding the chain gently around her neck. His knuckles brushed the back of her skin as he clasped it, sending a shiver through her. He hesitated for a second, then pressed a light, reverent kiss to the curve of her neck, just above her shoulder. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice thick with something deeper than words, "for coming into my life. I couldn't be more grateful." Natalia's eyes stung, though she was smiling. Before she could reply, Leo wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her back into the warmth of his chest. He rested his head gently against her shoulder, inhaling her soft scent as the sunlight poured over them. Natalia's heart swelled. She lifted one hand, cupping his cheek tenderly, her thumb brushing over his skin. The other hand covered his, which rested securely over her stomach, their fingers fitting together like they had always belonged there. For a long, breathless moment, they stayed like that, two souls in quiet harmony, the world fading around them. "Leo," she whispered finally, her voice trembling with emotion. "You make it feel so easy to just be myself." His lips curved into the faintest smile against her shoulder. "That's all I ever want, for you to be yourself with me." Her eyes closed, and she let herself sink into the embrace, the necklace cool against her skin, his warmth surrounding her, the sunrise sealing a memory that neither of them would ever forget. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was real, deep, and for both Leo and Natalia, it was the most romantic moment of their lives. Now we've come to the end of this story. Leave us your thoughts in the comment section about this love story. We'd be sure as God leads to keep writing you more amazing love stories. Thank you for staying this far. May God bless your heart in Jesus' name. Amen.